When we
Yeah.
listen to music, if it's just an intellectual experience, I would say the music has, at least in my case, it would not have reached me fully. I wanted to hit my emotions as well. I mean, I can look
Yeah.
at the technician and say, wow, they technically, what a great musician. But I really want the emotional experience of like, wow, that music really does something to me. And the title, Super Psyched, does not mean super happy all the time. It means super connected to our psyches. When we are feeling happy, we own the happiness and the joy. When we're feeling grief stricken, and we are able to leverage that as well.
Are you ready to live a life with enough time, money, and energy? Have relationships and connections that delight you? Are you ready for the extraordinary life you know you've been missing? If so, then this is the place for you. I'm a best-selling author, coach, consultant, and speaker who's worked in technology for over 2 decades. I'm a leader at transforming people and organizations from operating in fear, obligation, and guilt to running off joy, ease, and love. It's time for Engineering Emotions and Energy with me, Justin Wink, Ph.D.
Today we are talking about connecting, and I'm super psyched to have Dr. Adam Dorsay, the author of Super Psyched, The 4 Types of Connection. He is an executive coach in Silicon Valley. He's a licensed psychologist. He works with crazy high achieving adults at some of the highest in, our companies. And he's got an award-winning podcast also called Super Psyched. And he's delivered a couple of really highly regarded TED Talks, one on men and their emotions. I thought there was only 2, numbness and anger. So I'm curious about, and then also friendship and adulthood. So Adam's book, you can find it basically anywhere you can find a book. So Amazon, all the places. So Adam, welcome to the show. So
Justin,
good to connect with you.
so happy to be with you, man.
Yeah, like I really enjoyed reading your book because connection's been something that like it's always been a theme in my life, and it's just and it was like almost the right book and like the right interview at the right time. And what I loved about the book was, your personal stories for yourself. I always like somebody's personal stories about themselves. You have so many great anecdotes, but it was just there was like I'm like I feel so similar and also so different from you. And I
Hmm.
think that's just part of the human experience is like we're so similar with our differences. And one of those was you were talking, I think, about you were really young, and at some point you went to try to like play with like 12 different kids and they all shot you down.
Yes.
And I'm just like, I think I was just like, I wouldn't even go up to one kid because it's like I could just feel that I'm like, this is not going to go well, or at least that's my earliest memory. And it's just like that you went through the 12 to get the shot, and I'm like, we are so different, but yet we both were longing for that connection that like I want someone to play with, and like. And I just thought that was a beautiful anecdote as part of the book of like, that this is not a new thing. And like, what is it in your work and what you found that has drawn you to, writing a book about connection and being this one of the focal points in your many years in this area?
Well, Justin, I'm so glad you asked. I knew that I would write a book when it bit me so hard. To borrow from Irv Yalom at Stanford, he said every book he ever wrote bit him in the ass. And this topic bit me in the ass in the sense that it took hold of me. I had been practicing as a psychotherapist for over 20,000 hours, and it just, this word kept coming up, this word connection, in my podcast with all these thought leaders. The word connection just kept showing up. And I realized that there hadn't really been a book dedicated to this topic that seems to be the precursor of everything we want. It's certainly present in everything we don't want. I should say absent in everything we don't want. If you look through the DSM, which is what mental health practitioners use to diagnose people
Yeah.
with, for example, depression, it a big part of depression is a disconnection from the present because oftentimes we're thinking about the past.
Hmm.
When we're anxious, we're often disconnected from the present, thinking about the future and worried about that. Oftentimes with trauma, a big hallmark of it can be dissociation, which is a disconnection, as well as in psychosis, of course, which is severe mental illness. It's characterized with a break from reality itself. So there's a disconnection there too. So at the heart of almost everything we don't want is disconnection. And it seems logical. And it's been certainly my experience as a clinician that at the heart of everything we do want is connection. Doesn't mean we want to be connected all the time. Sometimes we want a pleasant dissociation. Sometimes we want to watch Netflix and just dissociate and just let go. For sure, if I'm giving blood and they're going to be jamming a needle up my arm, which I hate, I would
Uh-huh.
prefer to not be there, so to speak. So I dissociate during those moments. So I'm not saying we want to be connected all the time, but what
Yeah.
we do
It's
need
in
is
moderation, right? And it's in healthy doses. And I'm with you with the needles. I'm like, I can look the other way. Like, why chance it? Why do I want to look at that? And yeah, so
totally. But to your point, Justin, there are similarities and differences. And that's why I say that each person has a different formula to find their versions of connecting. And I came up with a definition of connection because in the Webster's dictionary, it's a rather lackluster
mhm.
definition. It's like two train cars connecting with each other. And that's clearly not what people are talking about when they say, I really long for connection. And
Yeah,
even in
that's not
the,
what they're longing. Yeah, and this is something I definitely want to get into a little bit. Is this a concept of maybe healthy disconnection or disconnecting so that you can have the connections that you really want to long for? Because I think you kind of mentioned a little bit in your book a little bit about this idea of like enmeshment, and there's probably some other stuff. And I know for myself, I've been going through like a period of disconnecting from stuff I was that I unconsciously connected to that was not for me. And then now it's sort of like getting into this period of like, okay, now I'm, what do I really want to connect to, like from choice and as an adult and things like that. And yeah, so I'd love to get a little bit into that of like that, yeah, that like that it's, yeah, it's not just any connection, right? It's not just like, oh, okay, as long as I'm hooked up to something, I'm good. Like I think we feel it, but I don't, yeah, I think that's been missing in our culture that like we want more than that.
you got it. This book is all about intention and using what we know we like from history and also from experimentation for what leaves us feeling connected. Now, the definition for connection that we came up with for this book, and I say we because I consulted about 10 other licensed mental health professionals to create a working definition for connection, but it's what brings us alive, it's life force. And you and I both know it when we feel it. I heard a song in a movie the other day. It didn't take multiple playings of the song to know that this is a song that brings me alive. You've had
Yeah.
that happen to you. It might be your kind of every batter in the MLB when they're playing at home. They have a walk up song to get them energized. That is
Yeah.
something they connect with. And everybody has a different walk up song. So we all have different formulas for what connects us. There's certain similarities you and I share. There's certain things that you and I would talk about and say, oh my God, yeah, that brings me so much connection.
Yeah.
And I looked at it through the lens of four ways that we connect because there are really only four. We connect with ourselves, and that's the primary connection. It's not selfish to need to connect with ourselves first to know who we are, what it is that we want. And then it ripples outwards. And if you can imagine almost like rippling out circles or like a target, the second
Yeah.
circle is connecting to others. That could include connecting to your significant other or your friends, your family, your clients.
Coworkers, whatever
Sure,
you,
coworkers,
yeah.
any,
Yeah.
and I included pets because for many of us pet people, they are significant others in our lives. And then the third is how we connect to the world. That could include work, that could include travel, that could include art or nature or our ancestry. And in the fourth circle is how we connect to something greater. For some people, for religious people, it could mean connecting to God, but for the most unreligious, perhaps even profoundly atheist people, if they go to, let's say, Joshua Tree, or they go to, who knows, Yellowstone or Grand Canyon, they say, wow, wow is an indicator that they're experiencing something greater. They're experiencing, in all likelihood,
Yeah.
they're experiencing awe. And one of the things that we know about awe is it's very good for our mental health. It's like gratitude on steroids. And if you
Mhm.
put someone's into a neuroimaging situation, the receptors that become activated in our brain when we're experiencing awe are the same as those that are hit on when we take in psilocybin, the psychoactive chemical for magic mushrooms. But with awe, we can do it without needing to take in external agent. We can just get it ourselves and we can get it
Yeah.
anytime. So I looked at those four ways that we connect. And what I know for sure is, and there are very few things I can say I know for sure, is that we need to have quota. We need to meet quota around connection in these four areas.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't tell them where to find it, but I basically tell them these are the things that you're going to be looking for as you go on the quest to figure out your own connection formula.
Feeling overwhelmed by the daily grind? Imagine if you could pause, reset, and truly connect with a calmer, more fulfilled you. It's not just a dream, it's absolutely possible. Hi, I'm Justin, and I invite you to discover the life-changing techniques in my book, Engineered to Love. Right now, I'm offering a free chapter complete with guided audios that have already helped so many people find peace amidst the chaos. These aren't just any techniques. They're transformative practices designed to help you love yourself and engage deeply with the present moment without even having to close your eyes to the world around you. So join us at engineeredtolove.com/sample and access your free guided session. It's time to bust the busyness and embrace the joy, ease, and love in your everyday life. Don't wait. Start your journey to a more relaxed and recharged you today, because you deserve to live a life you love. Visit engineeredtolove.com/sample. See you there.
Yeah. When I was like reading it, there's a little of me thinking about the order of them of like connection to self, like spirit's like in there or under the hood, or it's like the self kind of comes out of spirit or spiritual. And it as you were describing, it just came to me that it's really like I'd put these in a circle where it's like, self lead, spirit can lead to self, can lead to others, can lead to the world, can lead to spirit, can lead to this, like they're all interconnected. Like there really isn't like one more important than the other. I will say I do think that like the spirit and the self, I think actually are the most important to actually know if these the world and the other people are working for us. Otherwise, again, it's like things kind of get inverted, and it's like maybe it's become an attachment, not a connection, by your healthy definition.
Yeah, so I might see it just a little differently.
Oh
It's almost
yeah.
like we're two blind men touching an elephant, each of us, grasping at different parts. But the way I see it is the connection to ourself is primary.
Hmm.
And one of the things I know for sure is that people do need people. So others are very important. The question is, who are the others that we should allow in our lives? And who are the
Yeah.
others that maybe we should minimize or actually block? And how do we connect with others? How do we do it in a meaningful way? One of the things that we were not taught in school, very sadly, is how to connect well with another person. There's a great quote that was conveyed to me by a colleague of mine. It apparently is attributed to a great British psychoanalyst, Donald Winnicott, who apparently said something akin to true psychological health can be exhibited by one's willingness to share their own experience with another and the ability to take in the experience of another. So a good upload and download. And that's not something we're taught in school. And
Yeah.
connecting with the world, I mean, when we're thinking about our jobs, I mean, what are the two things that people talk about most in my office? If it was Family Feud, our number one answer would be love. The next one would be the job. Those are the two things that take up most of our time. In fact, who we marry, if we get married, or who's our significant other, and who we
Yeah.
report to at work are our most significant others in terms of the amount of time that we spend with people. And we'd better choose wisely and find good ways, good strategies to connect with those folks. I can tell you're a very spiritual person because you gravitated immediately toward the fourth realm. And it doesn't necessarily mean that they have to be in any particular sequence, but that's just how I imagine them. And many people have validated it, but what you're saying is equally valid. You gravitate toward self and spiritual, and less towards others in the world. But that really speaks to really the way you look at this Rorschach, so to speak. And this basically tells me, hey, yeah, this is what Justin's into.
We talk in a couple years and maybe it's shifted.
Exactly.
Because I am very interested in other people at this, like it's because it is one of those, like there's been a big period of me sort of like disconnecting from people that were not like a good match, and I really try to see it as like it's not like that they're bad people, it's just
Right.
they're not the best, they're not nourishing for me, where I'm at or where I'm going. But it's like, it's like I'm now divorced, it's like I've had well, my mother's now passed, but it's like with both of my parents, there were times where I was like, okay, I can't talk to you, and now I can't talk to you. And I'm like, okay, it's time for me to make some friends. It's time to make some friends. And that's been a focus of like a couple weeks. And it's already started to like shift, or just people are starting to come in. And I think a little bit, I think, help into your book, but I know that's one of your TED Talks is making friends as an adult. And I really would kind of love to hear, maybe some of the things of like, just, yeah, what are some ways to make it more productive or easeful? Because it's like I look back and it's like a lot of friend making is just based on like convenience, or you're just thrust together and
Mhm.
it just kind of happens in some ways, especially in like a larger city where it's like we almost have so much choice. Sometimes I know there's something of that, like where more choice actually doesn't make you happier. Sometimes it's like diminishing returns of it's like, okay, I don't need 8,000 types of yogurt. I just want to choose between three. And sometimes it's like, well, then I just won't have yogurt if there's too many choices. But yeah, I'd love to hear your thoughts of, of what you've learned on adults making quality friendships.
Yeah. So the way this TEDx talk bit me in the ass, so to speak, to borrow from what I said earlier,
Yeah.
is I had been working with so many incredibly friendable people who said
Yeah.
to me, "My gosh, I was born in Ohio. Went to school in New York. Then I went my first job in Texas, and now I'm living here in Silicon Valley. And in each of those places, I had friends, and I swore I would stay in touch with them, but I didn't. Now I've got kids, and I've kind of become friends with the parents of my kids' friends, and they're not necessarily the people I would choose as my friends, but we have some type of relationship. They are the
Yeah. They're
closest
like
things."
they're like friends or acquaintance, more of circumstance than of like
Exactly. And
nourishing you on all the levels you would like to get checked in a, yeah.
And one of the things that Esther Perel talks about, she's one of the great couple therapists, is that back in the day, not very long ago in the
Mhm.
history of time, we used to live in villages where we had multiple people serving different roles. We had somebody we'd hunt with, somebody we'd fish with, somebody we'd build things with, somebody we'd drink with, somebody we'd knit with, somebody fill in the blank. And
Yeah.
now we rely on our spouses, our significant others, to fill all of the roles of all of the people in the village. And that's way too much weight.
Yeah, like they're not even just the perfect lover partner. They're also the best friend too, right? Like that is like it's everything.
Well,
It's
right,
everything.
and I see Dune over your shoulder. If I've watched Dune with my son, I love the
Yeah.
movie, and I know for a fact my wife would not enjoy that movie. And if I
Yeah.
needed to lean on her to be the person to watch that movie with me, we would both be miserable. She would be unhappy, and I would
And
feel her
you'd notice
unhappy.
that. Yeah.
And I will not watch the Golden State Warriors with her. That's just not her jam. She
Yeah.
fills so many great roles. She's the greatest human being I've ever known. And yet she cannot be all of the things. No one can. So we
Yeah.
do need friends for different things. And I like thinking of friends as being superheroes with superpowers and limitations.
I love that. Like
Spider-Man can spin the hell
Superman.
out of a web, but he's
Yeah.
not going to be able to fly like Superman. And I may have a friend that I watch sports with, but I wouldn't rely on him for my emotional needs. I wouldn't talk.
Right.
And there might be a friend with whom I talk about really high level brainy stuff, but would definitely not be the guy I would call on when I'm going to be moving to a new place and say, "Hey, dude, could you help me move?" So
Yeah.
each friend has different superpowers and limitations. We need to appreciate them for who they are. And as you said earlier, sometimes it's not a match. They might be great
Mhm.
people, but the chemical combination isn't there. And it's
Yeah.
no reflection on them being bad people. It's just a question of how do our chemicals really interact?
Yeah.
Is it alive? And I have a thing that I call the drive away test, and that is after sitting with a person, how do you feel as you're driving away or leaving the interaction? Do you feel taller? Do you feel happier? Or do you feel smaller? Do you feel exhausted? And these are important things to listen to in terms of ascertaining how we will allocate our time. Our time is our one non renewable resource. We can lose our health and get it back. We can lose our money and get it back. We can't lose our time and get it back. And so, how we allocate time for friends is very important. And how we choose friends is very important. And as you said earlier, your ideas of things may change in the next few years, as might your priorities for friendship. I remember when I was a little boy, all that I needed was, a heartbeat and somebody with a ball who lived next door. I'd knock on the door and say, "Let's go throw a ball." I have a friend. As I got older, it was a question of, do they have social interests that are similar to me or academic interests that are similar to
Yeah.
me. And then over time, I really cared about truly about integrity and reliability and the somebody who made me a better person and who I felt made me a better person. These are not things I
Mhm.
would think about when I was 8 years old,
Oh yeah.
or let alone in high school. In high school, I just wanted cool people to hang with.
Yeah.
And that's
Oh yeah.
fairly normal. And as we get older, our needs for friendship, the filters, so to speak, that we're looking for do tend to change. And the problem is we all are so busy. I mean, who has time to find friends or make friends? And I would say we all need to do that. And the way we can do it is we can couple it with something we already like doing. We can go to a meetup and go to on a hike. Worst case scenario, we drive home after having had a great hike. Best case scenario, you meet somebody really cool who also likes hiking and you have an incredible conversation and the start of a beautiful friendship. So there are many ways to make friends. I personally have found having a dog to be one of the best things you can have. As soon as you walk to the neighborhood, people will engage you. People will not engage you if you don't have a dog. They're very,
Yeah.
very unlikely. There are actual psychological studies, sociological studies that show that somebody who's walking a dog is far more likely to be engaged than someone who's not walking a dog. And after my first dog died, one of the things I did in my own grieving process was I made a list of all of the people my dog introduced me to, many of whom are dear friends, one of whom got me
Yeah.
my first TED Talk. So all I can tell you is there are ways to make friends. We need them. Even the most introverted amongst us needs to have a
Oh yeah.
friend.
There's so many great things. One cool thing is like do something that you're gonna enjoy doing, whether you make a friend there or not.
Right.
It's like I'm thinking back to some bad advice. I think especially like earlier on in my late 20s, early 30s and single, I was like, oh, go meet women at these, social kickball, like sports ball stuff. I don't really like sports. And I'm just like, no, thank you. And they're like, and somebody's like, and I told the person this, and they're like, "Oh, well, a lot of women go there, and they don't like sports either." And I'm like, "This does not sound like the good basis of
That's not your
starting."
recipe.
Um, but yeah, I love that. Just go where you're going to enjoy the activity, but there's other people there too, because it's like if you're not leaving the house and you're not being around other people, there's close to zero chance. Um, and then I think the other thing that I really picked up on from you is it sounds like when you find something that like you like about a person, like let that one thing be enough to just keep interacting with them and drop any expectation of getting the whole, you know, having your whole 100-point list of what makes my best friend thing. Just like if you just enjoy dancing, just go do more dancing with them. If you just like, talking about sports, just talk sports and maybe there'll be more, maybe not. Is that something I'm picking up that
I mean, there are no hard and fast rules.
yeah.
If there were a hard and fast rule, make sure you're not with somebody who diminishes you, wants you to be smaller. We want people. I mean, there's this great
Well,
scene.
that's your drive away test part, right? Is
It's
like
part of the
how do you
driveway
feel?
test, but
Yeah.
the other thing is, I love that scene in Good Will Hunting, where the Ben Affleck character, who is from Southie Boston, looks at the Matt Damon character and says, I don't want to see you back here in Southie. I love you too much for you to have a diminished life. Many
Mhm.
friends, when they hear that their friend will be doing something big and bold, are afraid of abandonment.
Yeah.
And you want somebody who's going to cheer for you to become the best person you can be. You want somebody who's going to cheer you to be in the best relationship you can be in and find the best career or whatever is true for your life. You want somebody who's a cheerleader. So, irrespective of their superpowers, you want somebody who doesn't diminish you, but you want somebody who grows you and who you also grow. You want it to be a beautiful back and forth in that way, regardless
Yeah.
of the shared bond.
I agree with you on this, and I'll take it a step further, and you might disagree with this, but I kind of believe that the only thing worse than having, no friends or no connections is having like these sort of like bullshit friends, bullshit that are diminishing, keeping you small,
Mm.
even they might say that, but it's like draining you, killing you. And
Mm.
I had these friends like, and often in school and early on in work where, and it's just like, well, I guess it could be worse. I could be here alone, or I could be sitting with these other people that are even worse. But it's like I'm getting older, but am I growing? Am I learning? Am I vibrant? So it's like I've kind of gone through a process of like clearing the deck in a lot of ways, and just like it's got to be of a certain level, otherwise I'm I'd rather just connect with myself.
Absolutely. You don't want to be extorted into hanging out with people because you're lonely and hanging out with people who diminish you. Jim Rohn, a great thinker
Oh
years
man,
ago, once said,
he's amazing. Yeah.
he was amazing. And he said, you become the average of the five people with whom you spend the most time. And I think that's true. We do become the average. So choosing them carefully. Do I want to be like this person? Are they people who bring out my best? Are they people who I bring out their best? Is there mutuality? Is there reciprocity here? And if there
Mhm.
isn't, I would say getting comfortable with solo activities is really, really important so that you are not solely, at the behest of being with people who aren't good for you.
Yeah, and as someone who does it a lot, and I think it sounds like you did it a lot in the past, like it's like I love going to a movie by myself, eating by
Mm,
myself, or traveling by myself. And I love doing those with people when it's people
definitely.
like I that want to do that activity with me and we want to share in it. But sometimes it's like oh, I just want to watch this movie and I just want to watch it. And um, yeah, and I don't have to debate with somebody. And so it can be very empowering to just like I'm gonna do what I want when I want for a little chunk of time. I don't, have you ever heard of
Yeah,
the book The Artist's Way?
for sure. It was a
Yeah,
very, very, very informative for so many people.
yeah, one of the things she talks about is having this artist date, and it's all just like do one activity a week that's just all by yourself,
Mm.
so that your inner artist can just play, do whatever it wants without having to worry about what somebody else is going to do.
I couldn't agree more. I think that's genius.
Yeah,
And yeah, I mean, it's not the quantity of friends, it's the quality of friends that really matters. I
yeah,
know that sounds almost corny at this point, but it's really true. I remember meeting somebody and she said, oh, and I had a party and I invited 100 of my closest friends. And I was thinking, yeah, I don't know that you can be super, super close with 100 people, but fantastic. That's your experience. This was
yeah,
way back in college. I remember, but for some reason that left an impression on me. And it seemed like a bit far fetched. I think that if we're going to have close friends, we want to have, I think that paring down and having a reasonable number and people who show up and people who are truly reliable and kind. These are qualities we're looking for.
yeah. And I'll maybe I'll give it to this person that maybe their capacity of depth of relating maybe those were genuinely the 100 closest because there's not much capacity to get too
It's
deep, and
possible.
so.
I like your take on that, Justin, and that's
Like
it's
again, not someone I would want to be, I would consider a friend probably at this point in my life, but again, I don't
and
have to
for
be friends with everybody.
I love that. I love that. And you've caused me to see it differently just now. And you've actually changed my mind. And now I've actually seeing it as maybe that's her superpower, maybe that's her neural difference. Why not?
Is that,
But that
yeah,
certainly I can say it didn't resonate with me. But maybe it was entirely true. Who knows? Not I.
yeah. Because like I'm sure you've probably run into some of these people here in the Bay Area, the Silicon Valley, with all the tech stuff. Like, and maybe you even heard like there was this event. Was it just last Friday called like the quarter century Giga Party? It was in San
Oh, interesting.
Francisco, and it was like, a bunch of the top VCs were
Mm.
sponsoring it, and it was like thousands of people at this San Francisco nightclub. And it's like I kind of know the woman who, hosted it and coordinated it because I think I sort of met her when she first started like doing event organization and stuff like that. And it's like, so to get an event where she has 3,000 people showing up, it's like she must have a list of 20, 50,000 people or whatever. And I'm just like, this is not me. This is not like but she's incredible
Mm.
at it. And it's like, I'm glad there's some people that can do that stuff because it's not me. And yeah, it was a spectacle to attend and see this thing. And
That's interesting. As you say that, Justin, it calls to mind a title of a great book from Milan Kundera, The Unbearable Lightness of Being. It feels like it just wouldn't be, for me, substantial
yeah,
enough. I want to have some really, really deep conversations, deep relationships. So for me, less is more, but perhaps for this individual, that's what feeds them. And that's what's so interesting about the whole idea of the connection formula. Perhaps for this individual, that's as much closeness as she needs. So
yeah,
who am I to say? All I can say is we will be born and we will die, and what we do in the middle matters. And if that is her truth, and it might be that her truth changes in 5 years, just as you and I are talking about, we don't know.
yeah,
So maybe that she does like a 180 and says, you know what, I just want to hang out with my five closest friends. So who knows what happens?
Yeah, because in some ways I feel like life, this middle, between birth and death, it's a series of games and we get to choose what we want to play. And there's really no game better or worse than the other. The game of like, can I have a party of 3,000 people or can I have the most in-depth with one soul, for my entire lifetime, which I guess would be, a really good, monogamous marriage to whatever that person would be, and then everything in between. And it's like, real.
That's right. And then you're also talking about the idea of social comparison in JOMO. One of the things that I know for sure is that when we compare ourselves to others, it tends to go badly. We need to compare ourselves to ourselves, get in touch with who we are and what we want. And I also know that FOMO is, it's something that's part of the human condition. Patrick McGinnis, the guy who actually coined the term, has been on my podcast. He wrote a book called FOMO Sapiens, which I found hilarious, and it's just really brilliant. But
Yeah.
on Sunday night, I was supposed to go see a comedian I really liked, and my sister had just told me it was epic, and I on Sunday night I
You,
realized
will you share who it was that you wanted to see?
it
Or?
was Alex Moffat from Saturday Night Live, and I love him. I think he's brilliant. And he was playing at a relatively small venue. I bought
Yeah.
the tickets. And on Sunday night, I really got clear. A, I was exhausted. And B, I just wanted to be with my wife and son. And I
Yeah.
was willing to forego the money. It was a loss financially. But I experienced what one of my friends refers to as JOMO, the
Uh,
joy of missing out.
yeah. Well, because I've started doing this a few times in the past year or two as well, and my most recent was for like a Guar concert. Do you remember Guar? They would
I
dress up as like aliens, and
do.
it's like hardcore metal, but it's
Yeah.
like satirical, and that like it's like they'll mock, chop a guy's head off, and like fake blood will spurt out all over the. It's ridiculous and nonsense. And like I
Over
saw
the
them in high
top.
school. Yeah, and apparently they're still around. I think it's because they wear costumes. They kind of, I think some of the guys have died, but they replaced them. Yeah.
Which they can
Um,
because the costumes.
yeah. Um, but it was like I wasn't feeling well, and I'm just like, I'm not gonna go because I'm not feeling well. And it's like a feeling of wealth like kind of came up in me. I was just like, oh, I can really do what feels best for me now.
Bro,
Yeah.
that right there was connection with self from
Yeah.
where I sit. That's
Yeah.
amazing. And you said, you
Yeah.
know what? Yeah, I'm going to listen. So, one of the things I know for sure is that when we're not connected to ourselves, it's as if we have a massive head cold or we have a bunch of rocks in our shoe. How well do we connect with somebody if we have a massive head cold? How well do we connect with ourselves when I mean, all we can think about
Oh
is this
yeah.
massive head cold, and I just can't wait for it to go away. Insert whatever physical thing that is super uncomfortable for you. It might not be
Hmm.
a head cold. It might, being poked with a thumbtack. I don't know what it is, but all I can tell you is when we are in pain, it's akin to
Yeah.
not being connected to ourselves, because oftentimes we become what's called alexithymic. We're out of touch with our emotions. We don't know what our emotions are. They become estranged from us. And so
Yeah.
we need, if I was to say to you, I mean, some people might say, oh, emotions are useless, whatever. They're not for me. And I'd say, fantastic. Hey, you know what? Can I have the keys to your car? And they'd say, why? And I'd say, I'm just doing an experiment. Just trust me. So I go to their car and I
Uh,
put a whole bunch of black electrical tape all over their dashboard. And I say, fantastic. All right, now go ahead and drive around. And they'll say, are you high? Like, what did you do to my dashboard? And I say, well, that's basically what you're doing with your emotions. Your emotions are meant to be data. Not all of them are meaningful, and feelings are not facts,
yeah.
but we do need to lean into them and figure out a better way to relate to our emotions, because sometimes they're directives. Sometimes they're directives to say, you know what, I'm not going to go see Guar. I'm not going to go see this comedian. Or I need to, in spite of the fact that this is terrifying, sometimes we become smart enough and say, and the emotion is there, I'm still going to do the thing because it's a target behavior. But
Yeah.
I face the fear and I do it anyway. And the fear, if we also know that having fear is a precursor for courage, if we're doing the target thing, of course, not if we're doing something reckless or like, you know what, I'm scared.
Yeah,
I'm going to drive 50 miles.
there's appropriate fear. Like all of a sudden, if there's a Bengal tiger, it's like hey, it's some fears. That's healthy. It's like what is a Bengal tiger doing in San Jose? This is something not this is out of the normal. But Anything
And
else,
yet,
it's like we're probably going to be fine.
for the most part, and yet, and to your point, yeah, and with the 24-hour news cycle and social media, everything seems urgent, everything seems terrifying, everything has massive implications, or so we think, because what they're doing is they're hoping to get eyeballs. If it bleeds, it leads. And one of the things
Yeah.
we need to get better at doing is deciphering, is this truly a crisis, or are they blowing things out of proportion to get my attention? That's
Well,
another
and
thing.
it's just about what's the product? Oh, it's advertising and I'm the product. And it's like it's 100% they're trying to hijack your eyeballs to just yeah. And I think that's one of the I would call that as like healthy disconnection is how to cultivate or cut off your feed on social media and or the news.
Totally. And the word hijack is perfect, Justin,
Yeah.
because the part of our brain that's responsible for fear and anger resides in our emotional centers of the limbic system, which is known as the amygdala. The amygdala is this almond shaped piece that's in our brain on both sides, and it's there ostensibly to protect us. But these days, it can hijack our prefrontal cortex, the place where we do planning and really good decision making and analysis. And
Yeah.
it can hijack our abilities to really think. So if we are bombarding ourselves with fearful stuff on social media, we might not be thinking at our best. We might get angry and scared, say something that we can't take back, do something that we can't undo. So in many cases, this fear, also known as can be related to the negativity bias, which means
Mm.
that if we hear a rustling in the leaves, we imagine it's a Bengal tiger. When in Pacifica or in Silicon Valley, where I am, it's probably a squirrel.
Oh
um,
yeah. Yeah. I love that analogy of ignoring your emotions is like ignoring, everything going on the instrument panel. I am curious how many people have died because of your experiment, but I think it's all
so far, nobody's done it, and I've not done it
it's
with anybody. It's merely a thought experiment, to be clear, listeners.
it's all in the name of self-improvement. Well, and I'm sure this might be something that you comes up a lot because in working with Silicon Valley tech people, and I worked at a company that was really big on we're a data-driven company, and that's just like the biggest lie because humans are emotion driven. Period. End of story. Because we're always choosing what data we're going to allow in and to entertain. And I saw it so many times where it's like, wait, you have a better relationship with this person, so you weigh their data more than the other, even though the other is actually from an objective standpoint has higher quality, did more in depth, and all these other things. But there's a little bit of like,
Yeah. So, Justin, you're talking about cognitive biases, and
mm,
there are about 200 of them, and we can, for example, newscasters who are really attractive, we tend to believe they're smarter and more credible because they're good looking than somebody who would be less good looking, and who actually may be more credible and more intelligent. And that's called, the halo effect. There's
are
so
you
many of these.
suggesting Anderson Cooper, 100%
No,
of what he says isn't true?
he's got all of the things. He's amazing. He's good looking, and
Okay.
he tends to be accurate. I'm not saying he throws a strike every time, but I would say he's one of the more credible people, although I'm leaving my lane. But I'm not, yeah, I love me some Anderson Cooper. He's great.
Yeah.
But what I'm driving at here is, to your point, we are emotional beings, and emotions are coursing through us all day, every day, all the time, whether aware of them or not. And Anthony Damasio out of MIT actually has found that if you remove the emotional centers of the brain,
Mm,
that brain cannot make decisions because emotions are always a factor in our decision making processes, for better or for worse. But the more we become in
yeah.
relationship with those emotions and are able to figure out, hey, is this real, or is this just my fear limiting me?
I think it's like clearly just from that, you can't, it's like emotions are a point, are an important part. But I think I might almost argue that the emotional experience is the point of the human experience. It is like what is the emotional journey like you get to go on. Like it's, and the connection is part of that. It's the anticipation, the excitement, the joy, the love, and then even the loss. Like that some people can go a long time without experience with people, but it's like you get in the world of pets and it's like it's likely going to happen a lot sooner. And that was one of the stories I really did love from your
Mm.
book was the story of how you got your first cat, because I had like a very similar experience to having a cat foisted upon me when I was living with the woman that she was a girlfriend at the time, and we eventually got married. But it was one day I was like, "We're getting a cat. You're either coming along or not." And this orange fluff ball Julius gets put in my lap, and it's just like, oh, God damn it, I guess fine. And
That's yeah, and you're actually looking at the box over my right shoulder is are the remains of my very first cat. He's always in my office. He has been
wow,
so instructive. His name was Yoda. It was appropriate for he was a Yoda. He was actually
quite the
treated.
teacher, that cat, right?
He was, and he was treated by a veterinary oncologist right there in Pacifica. But yeah, we're chasing feelings, is what we're chasing in this lifetime. To your
Yeah,
point, you got it right. I believe that's what we're running after is an experience, a felt experience. When we
yeah,
listen to music, if it's just an intellectual experience, I would say the music has, at least in my case, it would not have reached me fully. I wanted to hit my emotions as well. I mean, I can look
yeah.
at the technician and say, wow, they technically, what a great musician. But I really want the emotional experience of like, wow, that music really does something to me. And the title, Super Psyched, does not mean super happy all the time. It means super connected to our psyches that we are
Ooh.
when we are feeling happy we own the happiness and the joy. When we're feeling grief stricken we are able to leverage that as well. So irrespective of the thing that we are able to embody it and be connected.
Yeah, I love that because it's like one of these things I've been, learning more and more through practice is like the joy of living isn't that you feel joy, happy all the time. It's that even in the depressed, the sad, the grief, the anger, the whatever, there's a part recognizing this is part of the human experience. And when you're conscious of it, of like, and this is part of me learning depth and getting clear on maybe what's the next emotional experience I want to go through, that there becomes an aspect of joy to that, even in those, what we would usually consider shitty moments.
Well, we do need those so-called shitty moments
Yeah.
because they
Yeah.
happen no matter how well things go in life, and they do become a basis of comparison as well. Like part of the joy is, wow, I have a basis of comparison.
Hmm.
I know joy because I also I know loss.
My losses have allowed so much more joys in my life that it's like one of those that, before and in the middle of it, I never would have thought. And you always hear of people like, oh, I'm so, but it's true. It's like, oh, these grieving moments have been the greatest gifts of my entire lifetime. And it really is. It's like, how do you go through it? And it's like, it doesn't have to be as hard, especially when you're connected. The more connection, the easier it is for all of these things. And so that's why, working with someone like you, or having the book, or having friends, or having, pets, or nature, or connection to spirit, that's what makes all of these, downs actually don't have to feel like as down when we really feel alone or with people diminishing us, then it's just it can be almost unbearable at times. And it's one of I've had times when it's like, oh, I get some people that, when they do take their life, it's like I get the drive. For me, it's always just been like, I don't know, there's a little bit of, I'm hopeful that there's something's going to happen. There's a little bit of like, why should I have to do more work than I've already done?
Hmm.
But
Well, I mean, I can't comment on all of that, but one thing I can say is that when we think about depression, it is basically hopelessness times three, according to Aaron Beck, who's one of the founding fathers of cognitive behavioral therapy. And what he found is that it's hopelessness about self, future, and the world.
mm,
And one of the things that can possibly attend to a sense of hopelessness is finding a way to healthfully connect. And that's really what I'm hoping to help people do with this book is to find what is true for them, how they can connect to something that is empowering and allow them to feel more vitality throughout life rather than that hopelessness. And many of us were born with genes that are more likely to render us depressed or anxious. But one thing I know from Sonia Lyubomirsky's work is that we have a lot more in our control through intentional behaviors. About 50% of our happiness, according to her replicable studies, are attributable to genes. About 10% are about our current situations, and
mhm.
40% are within our control through intentional actions. And the 40% is actually a nice chunk of the pie if you think about it. And that's what this book is aiming to attend to, the 40% that we have control of.
Yeah, which is huge, especially kind of considering that I think a lot of times we think that like, oh, you only get like one flip of the coin or one spin of the wheel, but really we're spinning that wheel nonstop. So if you get to own 40% of the roulette wheel, you're going to be a winner a lot more often.
Right. Well, Justin, this has been amazing to be with you. I
Oh yeah,
really
I
have
was gonna say like it's time to wrap. Like any last
to.
words? Because
last
and then
last words are that yeah, I hope you check out the book. I hope it speaks to you in some way, and that what
yeah,
I found is that if we can attend to one area at a time, I do love the axiom: chase two rabbits, get neither. So maybe do one thing at a time from the book, and use it as a guide. And if you want to hit me up, as Justin mentioned, I've got a fairly large web presence. I'm here in San Jose, dradamdorsay.com, and love to hear from you.
yeah. Thanks so much, Adam. And yeah, I got motivated from reading your book to go back to Toastmasters. I did my first
Oh,
meeting,
sweet. Right on.
in like 6 years last week, and it was so much fun and great people. And so it really does have a lot of good resources, ideas, and to get the connections going in the healthy, fulfilling way that we all want. So definitely go check out Super Psyched at Amazon and all the other places you buy your books. And also Adam's got the Super Psyched podcast, and then dradamdorsay.com, where you can get all the amazing stuff, find his TED Talks and all that. So thanks so much, Adam. Good chatting, and good day, everybody. Thanks for tuning in to Engineering Emotions and Energy with Justin Wink, Ph.D. Today's episode resonated with you? Please subscribe and leave a 5-star review. Your feedback not only supports the show, but also helps others find us and start their journey of emotional and energetic mastery. You can also help by sharing this podcast with someone you think will love it just as much as you do. Together, we're engineering more amazing lives.